segment 2, what makes Lebanon Lebanon? You've just described the Cedar Revolution. Let's go, I'm a little leery of this because this happens so often in discussions of the Middle East. Let's go back 1,000 years.
1,000 years. Okay.
Not quite 1,000 years, but again, let's lay out what Americans need to know. By the way, I'm a perfect subject for this because my ignorance is approaching the total. What Americans need to know to comprehend in at least a basic way Lebanon. Let me quote to you from The Road to Fatima Gate. There was the dirty little secret in Lebanon everyone understood perfectly and few Westerners wanted to think about. Politics were dangerously split along a fault line more than 1,000 years old. Now, you've just said that Lebanon was divided roughly in threes on sectarian lines. Elaborate a little bit.
Okay, the 1,000-year-old fault line, it's actually about 1,300 years. Very shortly after the establishment of the Islamic religion, there was a power struggle. And what happened is the Shias, who we think of it, the Shia Muslims, which are about 10% of the Muslims worldwide, supported the losers in the power struggle. And who are now the Sunnis, supported the winners in the power struggle. And they have been divided ever since.
So this is a group that's not good at letting bygones be bygones.
Neither one of them are. Nobody in the Middle, and it's not just the Sunnis and Shias. In the Middle East, everybody has long memories in this part of the world.
Okay, so give us something. This is not like Protestants versus Catholics in, say, Kansas, where everybody gets along with everybody else. It's more Protestants versus Catholics in Ireland during the peak of the Troubles.
Yes, that's exactly what it's like.
The divide is cultural, religious. They hate each other, or they're able to live with each other. Give us some way of grasping how serious the rift is.
Sometimes they're able to live with each other, but they never really like each other. And the rift is the communities are defined by religion, but it's not necessarily a religious fight. You've got atheist Sunnis hating atheist Shias.
I see. All right.
Okay. In this part of the world, you have a religious identity whether or not you believe in God.
Lebanon, what we now think of as Lebanon, a little smaller than the state of Connecticut. We're not talking about a big place, an intense place, but not a big place, is several provinces within the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire collapses. Lebanon becomes a French mandate, achieves independence in 1943. French withdraw in 46, if I'm recalling your chronology correctly. And then basically, from the late 40s until the mid-70s, there's a country that works pretty well. What went right?
What went right?
Yes. We will get to what, well, we will get to that.
Okay.
But you've got about 3 decades when this country works pretty well. Beirut is referred to as the Paris of the Middle East. The country as a whole is sometimes called the Switzerland of the Middle East. It functions, right?
It did function.
Okay, so what went right?
Okay, here's what happened. So back then, the demographics were a little bit different. The Christians were actually a slight majority in the country. They were about 51%.
A little over 50, all right.
I think it was about 51%.
All right.
Nobody's really sure because there hasn't been a census since the 30s. And everybody's afraid of what the numbers are going to say.
Got it.
So they all agree they don't want a census. But Christians were just barely more than 50% of the country. And they created a pact with the Muslims that they were going to have power sharing. And that the central government was going to be weak because Christians did not want to be ruled by Muslims. Muslims did not want to be ruled by Christians. Sunnis did not want to be ruled by Shias and vice versa. So everybody had an interest in a weak state. So Lebanon became a sort of libertarian-ish country in the Middle East by design. It was the only way that they would agree to live together within the same country.
This actually, if you look at the history of the Middle East, those 3 decades of Lebanon represents a huge achievement. They actually figured out not necessarily how to like each other, but how to get along with each other. And it worked.
It did.
Lots of international trade, tourism, it was a safe country. Okay. From 1975 until 1990, civil war. What went wrong?
What went wrong was Yasser Arafat's Palestine Liberation Organization was in Jordan.
This is like War and Peace because
Yeah,
every time you start a chapter, a new character walks through the door. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so Arafat and his PLO are in Jordan, and they launch a war against the Jordanian monarchy to try to take over the country. The Jordanian monarchy fights back ruthlessly and evicts the PLO. The PLO flees Jordan into Lebanon. So they're in the south of Lebanon, along the Israeli border, and they create a little state within a state down there. And they use it as a base to launch terrorist attacks against Israel. They also created a little state within a state in West Beirut, which is the Sunni Muslim half of the city. And the Christians weren't very happy about this. They didn't like the fact that they've got a Palestinian state within a state in their own country that's starting wars with Israel. So, but the government wouldn't do anything to stop it because the Sunni Muslims of Lebanon welcome the Palestinians. So the Christians organized militias to take care of the Palestinians themselves.
So they had, by design, constructed a country with a weak central state, and suddenly along came a problem that only a strong central state could deal with.
That's right.
If the state were to deal with it at all.
Right.
So the Christians decided to handle it privately.
Yes,
with their own militias. Got it.
And small clashes mushroomed.
So
and
Christians start opening
apart.
fire on Muslims, and from that point on, it's only a matter of time until the country is
the whole
engulfed.
thing came apart. Yeah, and then every faction was fighting every other faction, and each faction subdivided into multiple factions that were fighting each other. I mean, it could not possibly have been more of a mess than it was.
Okay, last element, I think, to get the basics of Lebanon on the table. When does Syria come into the picture?
Syria came in during the war, first to keep the Palestinians, to save the Christians from the Palestinians, and then later to keep the Christians down. The Syrians didn't really care. They switched sides in Lebanon constantly.
What is the Syrian interest in Lebanon? Why do they care at all about? Why would they want Lebanon?
They want Lebanon for the same reason that Saddam Hussein wanted Kuwait. It's a small, weak neighbor that's a source of income, basically. And there was also an ideological element in both. Saddam Hussein said Kuwait should have been part of Iraq, and the Syrian government said Lebanon really should never have been separated from Syria in the first place.